It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10. Our top story. Taken at gunpoint, how 15 Ukrainian orphans escaped from Russia and the thousands of others left behind. Blast off for the world's most powerful rocket, but Elon Musk's Starship explodes just 4 minutes later. Prosecutors drop criminal charges against actor Alec Baldwin over his cinematographer's death as filming resumes in Montana. Deputy Prime Minister Dominic Raab awaits his fate after Rishi Sunak postponed his verdict on a bullying inquiry. The first wartime visit to Ukraine by the head of NATO as Kyiv pushes again to join the military alliance. And a fitting send-off. Family, fans and their dogs bid farewell to comedian Paul O'Grady. Plus, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30. Good evening. 15 Ukrainian orphans have told Sky News how they were taken at gunpoint by Russian soldiers, removed from their homeland and illegally transferred to Russia before making a remarkable escape to freedom and safety. Well, the children's ordeal shines a light on the thousands of others like them who are still in Russia after being taken from Ukraine, even though it's a war crime to transport them to a foreign country. The figures here represent institutions in regions across Russia and Russian-occupied Crimea, where children have allegedly been sent. Some have reportedly been taken thousands of miles further, all the way to Russia's Far East. Sky News has confirmed these establishments, orphanages, summer camps or boarding schools, where pupils get an education steeped in Russian patriotism, have been taken in Ukrainian children. Moscow claims it's giving them sanctuary from the horrors of war. But a leading war crimes investigator told us it amounts to cultural and physical genocide. Our international affairs editor, Dominic Raab, reports now on Ukraine's missing children.
Thousands of children have been taken from Ukraine by the Russians in this war. This is the story of 15 who escaped their clutches. Their ordeal lasted 5 months and took them 1,000 miles. But they have finally reached freedom thanks to one remarkable woman. Natalia was the director of their orphanage in southern Ukraine when Russian forces arrived.
Коли вони заїхали на територію школи, коли він мені ось так пальцем показав, іди сюди, це видно було тільки очі, це в балаклавах, повністю закриті, зі зброєю, вони не залишали свої автомати.
We know from CCTV footage taken in another orphanage how the Russian military has searched for children in this war. Natalia begged the Russians to let her children go.
На що мені відповіли? Везде буде Росія. Ми будемо стріляти вам в спину.
The day the soldiers came was filmed by Russian state TV. The footage doesn't show what the children say happened, that they pleaded not to be taken and the Russians fired their guns to make them move. 14-year-old Dasha describes those frightening moments.
Вже ми почали сперечатися з ними, казати, що ми не хочемо їхати. Ми лише в підвалі будемо. І вони почали на території школи почали стріляти. Нам тоді страшно було, тому що ми чули і бачили, як він стояв, там багато солдатів стояло, і почали стріляти.
They say they were moved against their will at gunpoint, a clear violation of the laws of war, taken from their orphanage to another in the village of Stepanivka, 150 miles behind enemy lines. Then the Russians moved them again as they retreated across the Dnipro River. 15-year-old Stas says he feared for the worst.
У мене було почуття, що ми більше не вернемося на рідну Україну.
He was right to be worried. They were heading for Russia. Taken through one city after another in Russian-occupied Crimea, then across the Kerch Straits and over the border. Natalia's worst fears had come true.
Це було саме страшне сказати дітям слово «Росія», що везуть в Росію. До країни, яка прийшла і забрала у нас все.
This is the fate that could have awaited them. Sky News has found evidence of Ukrainian children being deported deep into Russia. Some are given to Russian families, in these pictures in a city 2,500 miles from home. Others are sent to camps where we know children are indoctrinated in Putinist ideology and trained in the use of weapons. Putin! And they're being exploited for propaganda purposes too, in events presided over by Vladimir Putin himself. The children being made to hug this Russian soldier are from Mariupol, a city destroyed by Putin's military. The Russians say they're rescuing children from war. But both Putin and his Children's Rights Commissioner have now been indicted by the International Criminal Court for the war crime of deporting children. Charges they've both rejected.
Касается вообще обвинений Международного уголовного суда, они очень абстрактны. И у нас не поступало никаких документов. Мы не понимаем, в чем нас обвиняют. Все какие-то формулировки очень такие обтекаемые, да, ну, даже там предположительно участвовали в депортации детей. Но я тоже в детстве много историй страшных рассказывала. Дайте факты.
But this British war crimes investigator, who's seen our evidence, says Moscow's claims do not stand scrutiny.
This is clear conditioning of children for nefarious purposes. I think it goes to the overall criminal plan, which is to extinguish Ukrainian identity. So we're talking about cultural genocide, and we're also talking about physical genocide.
Our 15 orphans' journey ended in escape from Russia, slipping across the border and finding sanctuary in Georgia. They recall the moments they made it to freedom.
Ми їхали, роздивлялися гори.
Гори, і це коли ми
Ну, все
заїхали в
одно
гори.
тривога внутрі була.
Да.
Ні, ми, якщо чесно, ми раді, дуже були раді, що ми звідти виїхали, дуже раді були.
They're now waiting till it's safe enough to go back home. Against the odds, Natalia has kept her word and led them to safety.
І ось тут уже почалася, я називаю, дорога радості. Це просто вам не передати. Ну, я навіть зараз не вірю в те, що в мене все вдалося. Я навіть прокидаюсь зранку, думаю, ну невже? Невже це все вдалося? Так що це неймовірні почуття, це саме основне те, що я пообіцяла дітям, що я зроблю все, щоб їх звідти забрати. І в мене це вдалося.
It's a hard watch, isn't it? Well, Dominic's with me now. And Dominic, this is the culmination of months and months of work. Do we know how many children have been affected? And what's been the response from Russia?
Well, we're definitely talking about thousands. Yale University have come up with probably the most comprehensive independent estimate. They reckon 6,000 children have been taken into Russia. The Ukrainians say 20,000. And the Russians are quite open about it. They admit they are transporting unaccompanied Ukrainian children into Russia, but they say they're doing it for humanitarian reasons. And we heard from Russia's deputy ambassador to the UN saying that it is laughable to say they are taking children. He says they're saving them. But the International Criminal Court that's indicted both Putin and his Children's Rights Commissioner says if that's the case, then the Russians should be using the Red Cross and the United Nations to send children home, send them back to Ukraine. Instead, our research shows that, and others, that these children are going in the other direction. They're going deep into Russia. They're being transported thousands of miles, some of them as far afield as Siberia. The young ones are being distributed amongst families. Many of them, the older ones, as we were seeing there, are going to camps, to schools, institutions where they're being subjected to the same authoritarian, militaristic, Putinist ideology as young Russians. And they're being told that Ukraine is now forever Russia. So the war crimes investigator who we've presented our evidence to says that there seems to be a systematic attempt to erase their Ukrainian identity, to Russify them. And as we were hearing from him there, that could amount to cultural or physical genocide.
Dominic, thank you very much. Well, you can watch Dominic's full report on that remarkable escape and what life is like inside Russian schools, camps and orphanages for those who aren't so lucky. That's Ukraine's missing children here on Sky News throughout the day tomorrow. Scan the QR code to watch on the app. It's the biggest and most powerful rocket ever made, destined eventually to take NASA astronauts back into space. After an aborted attempt earlier this week, the SpaceX Starship lifted off from Texas to huge cheers. But it exploded 4 minutes later and fell back to Earth, with founder Elon Musk saying only that his team had learned a lot. Here's our science and technology editor, Tom Clark.
This was the loudest, largest and most powerful rocket ever launched. The SpaceX Starship hefted skywards by the super heavy booster with thrust equivalent to more than 100 jetliners at takeoff.
Booster after chamber pressure is nominal.
Engineers had said just getting off the launch pad would make this uncrewed test a success.
The Houston Tracking Station now acquiring the vehicle.
They got a lot further than that.
Onboard view from Starship.
But Starship failed to separate from its booster, the rocket tumbling through the atmosphere before breaking apart. In the gung-ho, fail-fast world of Elon Musk's SpaceX, this moment was met by cheers. Why all the excitement? Well, simply put, Starship is the largest rocket anyone has ever built.
The space shuttle was around 60 metres tall with a 29-ton capacity. NASA's latest moon rocket, SLS Block 1, is a whopping 98 metres tall. Saturn V, the last rocket to go to the moon, was bigger and more powerful still. But Starship, bolted on to the heavy booster, dwarfs even that at 120 metres with a 150-ton payload capacity. But size isn't everything.
SpaceX dominates the commercial launch market by making its rockets reusable. Starship is designed to be the same. Elon Musk didn't look delighted. Starship was supposed to complete an orbit of Earth before crashing into the sea, but even his critics were impressed by today's result.
For a first test launch of a completely new, revolutionary design like this, I'm very happy with it, and I'm sure SpaceX will be too. The point is, when will it get into space? When will it get into orbit? And the really revolutionary thing about Starship is the idea of recovering for reuse, and so they're a long way off.
SpaceX has proved it learns from its failures, but there'll likely be more before Starship is ready for astronauts bound for the moon and beyond. Tom Clark, Sky News.
When Alec Baldwin resumed filming today on his Hollywood movie, he did so thinking he could soon face trial after shooting his cinematographer Helena Hutchins on set. Tonight, prosecutors confirmed all criminal charges would be dropped. The star's lawyers told Sky News they're pleased with the decision. Well, our US correspondent Martha Kellner is outside the set on Yellowstone Film Ranch in Montana.
Yeah, Alec Baldwin was holding the gun which fired, killing rising star cinematographer Helena Hutchins and injuring the film's director Joel Souza. We know that much because of the huge amount of video footage that has been put into the public domain in connection with the criminal investigation into what happened. But Alec Baldwin has always denied pulling the trigger, always denied holding any responsibility for Helena Hutchins' death. And today, New Mexico prosecutors announcing that they have dropped involuntary manslaughter charges which carried a possible 18 months in prison against Alec Baldwin, although they do reserve the right to charge him with a lesser offence in the future. They seem to have determined that this gun could have misfired without the intervention of the person holding it. The timing of this decision was stunning, though, on the very day that filming of Rust here in Montana is resuming. In the place known as Montana's Paradise Valley, a project resurrected. Production on the film Rust is restarting 18 months after Helena Hutchins was shot dead on a set hundreds of miles from here. As the film's star Alec Baldwin did final rehearsals, he was told involuntary manslaughter charges against him in connection with Hutchins' death had been dropped. Alec Baldwin and other members of the cast and crew of Rust were doing last-minute preparations here when news came through that those charges which were filed in New Mexico had been dropped. A preliminary trial was due to start in just 2 weeks' time, so this was an incredibly dramatic intervention. And for those preparing to resume filming, a note of relief.
So Alec is a consummate professional, and I think we had every confidence in his ability to act within the movie, regardless of what's going on in any aspect of his personal life. I would say probably for everyone else, it's a good outcome in the sense that we feel that justice has been served.
The top of the spire of a church is all that's visible of Yellowstone Film Ranch from the public road. A poignant reminder that it was while rehearsing a scene in a church that Helena Hutchins was shot dead. The bullet lodged in the shoulder of the film's director, Joel Souza. A year and a half later, he returned to the set alongside other members of the original cast and crew. As part of a wrongful death settlement, Helena Hutchins' widower, Matthew Hutchins, has become an executive producer on Rust. Filming in this remote part of Montana is expected to last just over 3 weeks, but opinion is divided on the decision to complete production. Melina, a lot of people, as you know, look at the completion of this film and view it as disrespectful, insulting even, to Helena's memory. I know that you feel differently to that.
So we've had a lot of conversations about this, and because her husband and family are on board with the production, and her husband, Matthew Hutchins, is an executive producer on this film, we are convinced that we are doing what she wanted, what her family wants, and we're not really concerned about the broader public. And for Helena's art not to be seen, I think would be a much bigger disrespect.
There are still at least 5 outstanding civil lawsuits against Baldwin and the other producers of Rust. But the Hollywood veteran will now finish this film, an actor and not a criminal defendant. We're yet to hear in person from Alec Baldwin, but just in the past couple of minutes, he has posted on Instagram a picture of himself hugging his wife, Hilaria. He wrote, I owe everything I have to this woman and to you, Luke, he writes in brackets. I believe that is a reference to his lawyer, Luke Nikas. So Alec Baldwin clearly very pleased that these charges have been dropped. And just another note on the production of this film, Rust. I'm told by a source that as much of what Helena Hutchins filmed on the original set of the film Rust will be maintained in the final version of this film when it is released. And the cast and crew of this film, those who have signed up to see it through to completion, believe that they are doing it in honour of the memory of their friend Helena Hutchins.
Martha, thank you. He put integrity at the heart of his premiership, and tonight Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is yet to decide the fate of his Deputy Prime Minister Dominic Raab, several hours after receiving a report into bullying allegations. Mr Raab, who's been under investigation for 5 months over 8 formal complaints, has repeatedly insisted that he acted professionally. Sky's political editor Beth Rigby reports.
Are you confident you're going to clear your name?
Absolutely. That the question that's long followed Dominic Raab around. And now, after 5 months of this...
I'm confident I behave professionally at all times. I'm confident I behave professionally throughout. I behave professionally at all times.
A decision on his fate now imminent after the report investigating bullying allegations against the Deputy PM was handed to his boss, Rishi Sunak, who now has to decide whether his deputy stays or goes.
This whole thing's now turning into a farce. Can you imagine being a civil servant who's raised a complaint? The Prime Minister should think about what it would be like if it was him in that situation. He's the First Minister of the civil service. He has a responsibility to his civil servants to ensure that they're protected from bullying harassment and that they're treated with respect. This is not treating those civil servants with respect.
The allegations of bullying concern Mr Raab's time as a cabinet minister across 3 different departments, taking in 8 separate complaints with a number of complainants. And while his accusers await a decision, others seek to defend him.
I must have attended hundreds of meetings with him, with civil servants and MPs and other officials. And not once did I ever witness him behaving in a manner that could be described as bullying.
Conflicting interpretations of his behaviour, but the terms of reference of this investigation clear to establish the facts and to be completed as swiftly as possible, with the Prime Minister as the ultimate judge. And tonight he's still weighing up the verdict. I'm told the Prime Minister is taking his time to go through the report and consider it thoroughly, because this is a really difficult decision for Rishi Sunak. Dominic Raab is one of his most loyal lieutenants and a trusted political ally, so to part company with him will come at a personal cost. But this is about politics too. If Raab goes, then the Prime Minister will face questions as to why he appointed him in the first place and what he knew when. If Raab stays, the Prime Minister risks a backlash from the civil service and questions about whether or not his really is a government of integrity. Dominic Raab has seen the report and maintains he behaved professionally. But the opposition calling for the PM to adjudicate and fast.
The Prime Minister really should be able to read the report, make up his mind and get on with it. Stop dithering and delaying, and we do need people to have faith in politics.
Next month, the country's faith will be tested at the local elections. Not an explicit judgment of the PM, but of his party and his record. This, the third Cabinet Minister of Rishi Sunak's short premiership to face the sack. The wait continues. Beth Rigby, Sky News, Westminster.
Well, earlier in the programme, you heard the story of 15 Ukrainian orphans who were illegally transferred to Russia. Today, NATO's Secretary-General visited Ukraine for the first time since the war began, where he delivered the clearest signal of support yet ahead of Ukraine's next big offensive. Here's our security and defence editor, Deborah Haynes.
A show of respect for Ukraine's war dead and a show of defiance to the Kremlin. The NATO chief had previously kept his distance since Russia launched its full-scale war. Ukraine is not a member of the alliance yet, and there was concern his presence here might be viewed as provocative. No such caution now. Jens Stoltenberg in Kyiv, greeted by the president.
Great to see you.
His country is preparing to launch a big counteroffensive and needs all the support it can get.
We do not know when this war will end, but we know that Russian aggression is a toxic pattern that must be stopped. Let me be clear. Ukraine's rightful place is in the Euro-Atlantic family. Ukraine's rightful place is in NATO. And over time, our support will help you make this possible.
Welcome words for this wartime leader, but he'll want actions too.
We interpret this first visit of the Secretary-General during the full-scale war as a sign that the alliance is ready to start a new chapter of ambitious decisions in relations with Ukraine.
It's a goal that will enrage Russia's Vladimir Putin, who's also becoming more daring. Earlier this week, apparently visiting a part of southern Ukraine occupied by his troops. Back in Russia, the president praised those who've gone to fight.
They set an example of devotion to the motherland and its interests, and now they're standing for our historical territories, protecting people, the inhabitants of those territories.
The NATO chief was shown the reality of this so-called protection. The town of Bucha, outside Kyiv, where dozens were killed. Now a place of reflection, even as Ukraine prepares for the next bloody stage of this war. Deborah Haynes, Sky News.
At least 78 people have been killed and 73 others injured in a crush in the Yemeni capital, Sanaa. A warning, you may find the images coming up distressing. Hundreds had gathered in the hope of receiving a charitable cash donation in the final days of Ramadan. Witnesses claimed panic was sparked after armed Houthis fired into the air and hit an electrical wire, causing it to explode. Hundreds of well-wishers lined the streets of Aldington in Kent today to pay their final respects to the comedian Paul O'Grady. Dogs from Battersea Dogs and Cats Home formed a guard of honour. And in a nod to his alter ego, Lily Savage, the star's coffin was topped with an arrangement of lilies, as Ivor Bennett reports.
In death, as in life, Paul O'Grady still draws a crowd. Hundreds lining the route of his funeral cortege through this quiet corner of Kent to say goodbye to not just a neighbour, but a national treasure.
It's important to be here today because he's just amazing, absolutely amazing. I love him, and as a family, we all love and adore him. He's just so special.
O'Grady's husband accompanied the carriage with one of the couple's dogs as they laid to rest not just the entertainer, but his drag queen alter ego too. Lily Savage's distinctive hairpiece, a typically witty centrepiece. And what else but Lily's to top the coffin.
I'll really miss him because he was a great, great talent. He knew when to hang up the dress. He knew exactly what he was doing. And his love for animals. I mean, I remember lots of times talking to me and saying, I prefer animals to human beings.
Among the mourners, Rolling Stones guitarist Ronnie Wood and the comedians Joe Brand and Julian Clary. But amidst a cast of comics, it was the Guard of Honour outside the church that put a smile on people's faces. Dogs from Battersea Dogs and Cats Home, in recognition of the work O'Grady did to help it. Since his death, a tribute fund set up by the charity has raised nearly £300,000.
He was a big part of Battersea, and it feels like a little bit of Battersea's heart has slowed down today as well because of Paul.
He was a Saturday night TV staple, but his fame didn't define him. Remembered here as a man of the people and their pets. Ivor Bennett, Sky News.
Now, it has the makings of a tale fit for a Hollywood movie. A struggling football club, new millionaire owners, and possibly this weekend, the ever-elusive promotion. Wrexham's hometown fans and those travelling from further afield are hoping for their own fairy tale ending, as Katerina Vitozzi reports.
Welsh pub band the Declan Swans used to sing about the highs, but mainly the lows of being Wrexham football fans. The non-league club was heading for relegation, but 2 years ago came new Hollywood owners, a documentary and, crucially, investment that's led almost fairy tale-like to a chance this Saturday for a promotion back into league football.
We've hit the jackpot with these owners. It's just transformed the whole town, the community. It's a happy place to live. Everybody's talking about football. You know, over the years when you've seen youngsters with like Liverpool, Man United, Man City, Chelsea tops, all the kids wear Wrexham now.
Yeah. Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney, the new owners of Wrexham AFC.
Welcome to Wrexham followed actors Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney taking on football and life in this small Welsh city, making stars of its locals like the Declan Swans.
Well, I can tell you it's all here, it's all real.
Attracting new fans from across the world.
Had you even heard of Wrexham before?
Not once, never. Didn't even know how to spell it at first.
Michael Starkey lives in South Alabama and loved the film. He's never left the States, but his first flight ever will be here for Saturday's game.
I never would have thought, even 3, 4, 5 years ago, that I would be shoving myself on an airplane to go to the other side of the planet to watch a fifth-tier Welsh football club.
And as we were still in the company of Wrexham royalty.
How you doing, pal?
It's the band, yeah. It's so awesome to meet you guys. I love y'all's music. Nice one,
but amidst the Hollywood hype as a must-win game of football.
The club's had so many tough times, and we've had supporters who've followed this club home and away through all those tough periods, and it would be very special if we could finish the job off.
For now, the owner's box and the stands are empty. On Saturday, guaranteed they'll be singing. Katerina Vitozzi, Sky News, Wrexham.
Fingers crossed for them. Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview, including this story on the front of the Metro after the SpaceX rocket explosion. Their headline, Elon, we have a problem. Tonight, we're going to be joined by the columnist Carol Malone and the editor of The Courier in Dundee, David Clegg. Do stay with us.